He finds a Kyle. A Kyle. That's how tired I am. Nope, I'm keeping this in. He finds a. Are you ready to do this? Okay, so since MatPat won't talk about it, I guess I have to do it myself. Hey guys, it's Kay. And I'm not a FNAF tuber, but I do make YouTube videos. And I do like FNAF, and sometimes before I fall asleep, sorry, like now, my brain gets all clogged up with stuff, and sometimes it's that time that I got shamed out of the BTS ARMY's fandom for being too old and too goth for K-pop, despite being the same age as one of their members. So, first off, ARMYs, it's punk, not goth. Bowling for soup, punk, not goth. At me. I'll fight. Because punks came first, and second of all, I wrote this entire script to a playlist of BTS, so suck it. Now, on to the video. I'm skipping the rest of my intro tonight, y'all, because I have a spicy take, and if I haven't already out myself as a major loser enough already, I like Five Nights at Freddy's. And I know way too much about the lore. And I blame that on hyperfixation from my undiagnosed but probably ADHD. Oh, and also MatPat. All of that has led me to this point. And yes, I'll explain shortly. But for now, I'm speaking directly to Matthew Patrick. Hi! So, I've been a big fan of yours since before FNAF. But due to FNAF, I have a bone to pick with you. So you haven't covered the story in the flesh from the Fazbear Frights book series, specifically the book Bunny Call, enough, and I've waited until it got to feel a little irrelevant almost, just to give you a fair shot at covering it, but you never did, so now we're here, because for weeks now, this has been driving me crazy and keeping me up at night. And now I have to make a video covering it because you let me down. Matthew, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Actually, all of this is meant to be fun, and I really enjoy your content, and I admit that you work a lot harder at your videos than I do at mine. But since I have your attention, I have a video linked up in the cards and down in the description. That is my audition for being a researcher for your old Nicktoons. Also, if you happen to be interested, I have an Invader Zim episode coming out soon. Yikes. As I said, I look up to you, but if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself, I guess. So now we're here, and I'm about to make a FNAF video with my friend Foxy. He's been a little beat up. Don't just ignore that. But thank you so much for your time, Matthew. You're welcome to stay, but moving forward, I'm going to be addressing my normal audience or any new people who are out here. So, assuming that you haven't lived under a rock, you've probably, things that you appear on the internet and on YouTube, have heard of Five Nights at Freddy's, which is a video game series where you, for the most part, you play as a security guard in various animatronics, like this guy, try to kill you, for reasons. But there's so much more to it than that, and there are like several games and book series, and at this point there's basically like a weird ARG outside of the book series where you're trying to figure out and piece together the lore from like even like coding stuff. and I'll probably end up making a second, if not multiple, videos covering all of the lore at a later date, but for right now, here's the short version. Five Nights at Freddy's came out on August 8th in 2014 and was quickly made popular by the Let's Players like Markiplier, PewDiePie, among several others. People started playing the games and watching people play the games, and they began to notice some oddities happening outside of the front-facing storyline. The first three games were, as I've already kind of described, you play as a security guard who has to avoid death by animatronics. And you use, lights and limited power and strategically shutting doors and opening doors to defend against the animatronics trying to kill you. The fourth game you play as a crying child who has seen some things. And the fifth game you work at an underground facility. You probably never heard of it. Where the animatronics try to kill you. They do so by scooping out your insides and taking over your body until your body rots too much to be used. And you kind of actually survive, but that's debated. And yeah, you thought this was going to be a fun ride, but you're dead wrong. Oops. Pun not intended. The sixth game, you play as a person who is a new franchise owner of a Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, and you, along with all of the haunted animatronics, get burnt alive, and you die. The last game so far is called Help Wanted. It's the most unique game, and you can either play it on VR or PC. And if you're new to the franchise, trying to do the ooh thing, I guess. I don't know what that was about. You can tell I've been listening to too much Corpse. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, if you're new to the franchise, this is the game I suggest that you play because you get a pretty good sample of gameplay throughout most of the games, even some direct, almost rip-offs of the first three games, and some bits and pieces here and there of all the others. So yeah, you should start with FNAF VR or FNAF Help Wanted if you're new to the series. You play as a game tester who dies? Debatable. Depends on what ending you get. In a horrific way, just to get stuck inside of the VR world of the game. And you're also solely responsible for unleashing a murderer into the world. Oh, you didn't guess that? Well, we'll go over that more in depth in another video. So far, all of this kind of covers the games, but in tonight's video, I'm going to be covering a story from one of the Fazbear Frights books. Fazbear Frights, for the uninitiated, is a book series, kind of anthology books of just short, sweet is a relative term here, short stories that are like chilling ghost stories, kind of in the Goosebumps-esque, but like way darker, but like children's horror. Suppose it's classified as children's horror, but like questionable. But anyway, this particular story is called In the Flesh. It takes place in an alternative Freddy Fazbear's universe. These book series were written by Scott Cawthon and several co-authors. Scott Cawthon is the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's, and he has fed us little bits and pieces of direct lore through these book series. They're more like allegory, but like they're direct lore. Father has finally given us some food. This particular story covers what could be one of the most important parts of the FNAF universe as it directly relates to the 7th game, Help Wanted. This is a trigger warning for brutal descriptions of violence, brutal descriptions of pregnancy, and descriptions of just gore and blood. I'm putting a trigger warning here because I got triggered by this. I, in fact, actually had to stop reading this story at one point, even though it's a children's horror. But we'll talk about that more later. So if you're okay with those things, keep on watching. Also, if you're brave enough and okay to stick through this video, then go ahead and give the video a like. This story, like the rest of the games, starts off innocently enough. The plot follows a guy named Matt, who's a game developer who is making a VR horror game. This sounds familiar. That alone is important, as we see that in Help Wanted, we learn that there's a rogue indie game developer who made the Five Nights at Freddy's games. They're based on the real-life events that took place in the Fazbear universe. And I think Matt is either that developer or he works for a company that's making the VR experience to help clear up the Fazbear's name. Or at least he's a stand-in for one of those people. He's tasked with making a VR game called Springtrap's Revenge. And in this game, the player is supposed to do a spooky maze and get away from the killer Springtrap. But Matt's not the greatest guy, and he fuels all of his unbridled rage into the AI that he programs for Springtrap. Cool. This, of course, leads to the AI being far too strong, and at several failed attempts of being beaten at his own game and being killed by Springtrap, Matt exits the VR, and in a childish fit of anger, he programs the game to make several years pass per second, leaving Springtrap, who's only programmed to hunt and kill, to go a little bit mad. This is because he has no prey, and he's a very realistic AI, so he goes crazy. And Matt did this to torture Springtrap. So like I said, Matt's not really a good dude. So when Matt comes to check on the game the next day, he checks the game log and he can't find Springtrap anywhere. Instead, he finds that Springtrap, in a fit of desperation to kill something, clones himself and kills the previous version of himself almost instantaneously. Now, a lot of people, when they're talking about this point, say, oh, he kills one in seconds. But the thing is, it would have been years for Springtrap. Because, remember, Matt made it happen where years passed within each second. So, he basically mentally hunts the clone and then kills it. But Matt, being a game developer, it's always crunch time, is in kind of a fit of desperation. So he decides that he has to go into the game, and he has to find where Springtrap is, because his deadline is coming up. So he logs into the game, and after some hunting around the maze, Matt finds that Springtrap, as a corpse, is laying on the floor of the maze, and when he touches the corpse, he feels a sharp pain in real life. He leaves the game, and promptly, the story goes even more off the rails when a hacker steals a copy of the game, and the hacker tries to play the game, but he also can't find Springtrap. However, when he's digging around in the game files, he finds a Kyle. That's how tired I am. Nope, I'm keeping this in. He finds a file called it'saboy.exe. And yep, that's where that story's going. Yay. So hopefully now my thumbnail makes sense. Anyway. Yikes. Let's get back to Matt. Matt got increasingly emotional and quicker to turn to anger, as if he wasn't already quick to anger. And he became very hungry for like an absurd amount of meat, which is kind of gross. And yeah, it's a very gross bastardization of pregnancy. Once again, I just want to remind you, this is where I'm going to once again note that trigger warning, because the rest of this from here to the end of the video is going to have very graphic depictions of violence and pregnancy. And here's where we get that oversharing moment. Because who doesn't love when I overshare on the internet? Cool. So what time? It is 5:30 in the morning right now. So I'm going to talk about my trauma. I have a lot of trauma around pregnancy, and the stuff in the story really triggered me, because I have an intense fear of pregnancy, and it's at this point when I start to feel like pregnancy is more like body horror than the joy of creating life. Let's get back to the story. So, Matt's condition continues to get worse until one night when he feels a tremendous pressure in his abdomen. So he takes a knife. Plug your ears, Foxy. This isn't meant for little boys to hear. Okay, are we good? Alright. And he cuts himself, like, into his abdomen. And from the wound... You good? I need to snuggle. So from the wound, a small version of Springtrap crawls out of Matt's stomach as he's bleeding out, and he crawls up and he holds Matt in his little furry Springtrap lap, which is really alarming, and he touches his face. And as Matt's life is starting to fade, he hears Daddy, which is just a little gross. No, let's be real. It's a lot gross, isn't it, buddy? Okay. So then Matt dies, and that's how Springtrap came into the world. Cool. Or glitch trap, maybe? Debatable. But we know that was real, because there's fur that was found on Matt's body. So, what does that mean? Well, I believe that this explains a lot. This actually explains in better detail how glitch trap, or Springtrap, escapes into the real world as seen in Help Wanted. This could also be seen as why or how that rogue indie developer mentioned in Help Wanted is weirdly no longer in the picture. Like, we don't really hear anything about them. This has a lot of interesting connotations for the FNAF universe, and I think that the rogue indie developer could have been ground zero for the cult of Glitch Trap. That, and or maybe I'm looking too far into this because, again, it's close to 5:30 in the morning, but the person that Matt's supposed to be an allegory for is either Scott Cawthon himself or William Afton. Before I leave all of you, let me just say that if by some weird coincidence MatPat actually watched this, or is watching this, or heard about this video, what I said before was supposed to be a joke, and I wasn't really calling you out, except for Henry. Yes. Henry Emily. I understand where you're coming from. I know exactly the steps you took because you explained it in the video that Henry's last name is Emily, but it's not. Emily's middle name, and no, I won't be taking constructive criticism. Take this as a no nuance November, even though it's no longer November. And for everyone else, join me next time when I steal another couch gag from a show like Obsessive Pop Culture Disorder. That joke doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand. Why would I write a joke like that? You get bonus points if you did understand that joke. Please comment down below and comment what other theories you want me to talk about in the future. And don't forget to subscribe. Sleep sweet.